Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you happen to be seeing this. I do believe that it is the right time. I am Erica Salee, and I am super excited to welcome you to the Loving You First launch. Listen, I have been so excited to share this with you. So, for as many of you who can join me live, that is great. If you happen to come in later, I do encourage you to hashtag replay. If you don't get a chance to see this live and you do come in to catch the replay later, I do thank you. And I ask you to hashtag replay, share your comments, and let me know how you're feeling about joining me on this Loving You First journey. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. I know that sometimes it takes folks a minute to come in and to be a part of the conversation. So I do encourage you to settle in with me for just a little bit. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to share the information about what Loving You First is all about. And then I'm going to give you some actions so that if you decide that this is the time for you to love on yourself first, and you're going to follow along with me over the course of the next 6 weeks, and I'll get into that in just a moment, then you will have exactly what you need in order to get started. So if this is your first time being with me in conversation, if you have not followed me before on social media, and I do want to say that I am having this conversation on LinkedIn and on my Facebook pages. Instagram will have to get the replay in full. Because I was unable to go live there. But nonetheless, if there are folks over on that platform who want to participate, rest assured that you will be able to do so. Hello, Miss Colette. Thank you for joining live. So listen, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So first of all, I am Erica Salee. I empower women and organizations to thrive through coaching, consulting, and speaking, with well-being as the foundation of every service. And I like to think of myself as the trusted source for whole person transformation. Well, what does that mean? Whole person transformation is all about focusing on you, us, me, and you, from the inside out, right? Focusing on wellness so that we are in the best place that we can possibly be mentally, physically, spiritually, so that we can achieve the goals that we desire to achieve. So again, thank you for joining me live on tonight. So here's the thing. I want to, just share so much information with you tonight in such a short amount of time. I've written some notes to make sure that I capture everything that I want to share with you on tonight. So first of all, you may be saying to yourself, well, what is this thing called Loving You First? Like, really, what is that? Well, the simplest way that I can put that is it is exactly what it sounds like. Loving You First is a campaign to help you and I be very, very, very intentional about taking care of us, about focusing on us, our needs, and what's important to us. Now, I know typically we think about loving us as a guilt trip or something that we should not do. But I'm here to tell you that this is the time for us to be very focused on what it means to take care of us. Now, why is this important right now? Well, here's what I would say. There's two things that I want you to focus on. When you hear this idea of loving you first, there's two different angles that I want you to consider. One is I want you to think about what your day has been like already. And I also want you to think about, well, what's on tap for me for the rest of the week? See, I know that if you're like me, you are trying to manage multiple things, especially as women. So let me be very clear. This Loving You First conversation, yes, is specifically for the sisters. Now, I know the brothers have their thing going on, but this conversation is for the woman out there who knows that she is trying to manage her professional space, her personal life. Maybe she's trying to figure out how to take care of herself because she's not used to doing that. She's taking care of everybody else. Maybe she's trying to figure out, well, how do I manage my time and navigate, because I'm doing all the other things for people who are vying for my attention. Maybe you're part of other organizations or other community groups. You're doing all of these things. And Loving You First has been at the bottom of the list, or it has not made the list at all. So that's number one. Number two, You have to be living under a rock to not recognize the state of affairs that we are in right now in this country. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into a political focus, but what I will say is that there's so much going on around us that there is a sense of frustration and overwhelm and anxiety that we are all feeling on some level. And you probably felt all of those things with all the other day-to-day stuff that you had to deal with, right? So with those two things, loving you first is paramount. It is probably the thing that we need to be focusing on the most. And why is that? Because if we do not do it, then we will burn the candle at all ends. And some of us are probably doing that right now, and you're feeling it, right? You're feeling exhausted, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling that sense of overwhelm, like, how am I going to manage all of these things? And I would venture to say that the more you continue to focus on that, and the less you begin to focus on loving you first, taking care of you first, investing in you first, then we put ourselves at risk. Now, what does that risk look like? Well, you're probably feeling some of it right now. The risk of not being able to get the things done, the risk of feeling like, well, how can I be here? How can I be there? How can I do this? How can I do that? The risk of putting ourselves in a place of dis-ease. Now, dis-ease can be as simple as feeling uncomfortable, feeling a little tightness in certain parts of your body, or dis-ease can lead to other health-related factors. So the reason why loving you first is important now is because we want to begin to shift the mindset and our behavior around how we're spending our time, and not just do all the things that are calling for our attention, but to begin to put the attention and shine the light on ourselves. Okay. So that's the reason why this conversation is important right now. So let me share this with you before I get into the details of, how does this work and what do I need to do and how can I participate? I have to say that many of you know, if you've been following me for a while, or maybe you don't know if this is the first time that you're checking in with me, but when I got divorced, I had to figure out, how do I change my mindset about what life looks like now? Understanding that I had to refocus, I had to rediscover, I had to figure out, okay, who am I? What do I want? What don't I want? What do I need to focus on? How do I even manage? Because this is all new and unfamiliar. And I posted something the other day. There was a question that someone asked me shortly after my divorce was final. And the question was, well, do you think that you'll ever get married again? And my response was, I cannot even process that question right now because this is also new. It's also fresh. So I have to first figure out who I am. I have to first love me so that I know how to be loved, or what I expect going forward when I do decide that I want companionship, relationship, and who knows, I don't even know if marriage again is in the cards, but I couldn't focus on that because my main question has been and still is, how do I love me first? That was paramount. So when I think about that question and trying to navigate in this new space, and it's not as new as it was before, but it's still a space that I am occupying, and I make it an intention to love myself first. So you may have your own specific scenario or situation or challenge that says to you, oh yeah, it's definitely time. I need to focus on loving me because I've been outwardly loving on everybody else and taking care of everybody else's needs and making sure that everybody else is okay and making sure the business is okay. And are my customers good? And does my family need me over here? But this is a pivotal moment. And so the outcome, if you decide to join me over the course of this next 6 weeks, is a shift, right? And that shift is that you begin to think about how loving you is no longer a question. You don't have to ask permission for it, but it is something that you do with intention. And if you don't do it, you feel kind of strange, as opposed to the other way around that I've heard many women talk about is that, oh, if I even think about, doing something for me or taking some time for me, I feel guilty about that. So this journey hopefully will help you to make the shift so that you comfortably move into this space of loving you. And it's not just for this finite period of time that this particular campaign is running, but it's something that you recognize is necessary every single day. All right. So listen, I have so many things to share, and I promise I don't want to keep you too long. So let me check over my notes just to make sure that I'm capturing all the things that I want to capture. So here is the next question that you may be asking, and that is, well, okay, now you've told me what it is, you've told me why it's important. So what exactly is it? What is the Loving You First challenge, campaign, however you want to, whatever you want to put into that to describe? Well, here's the thing. So for 6 weeks, now I know some of you are like, oh God, 6 weeks. I'm trying to figure out how to manage 6 minutes or 6 hours. Yep. See, this is where the challenge comes in. So if you really want to be intentional about making a shift for you, then yes, 6 weeks. So for 6 weeks, you're going to get a new theme every single week. Now, I posted something over the last couple of weeks to share with you what those themes are, but I'm going to share them again here in case you did not see the post. So here are the weekly themes. The first week is, which is this week, which starts tonight, and I'm going to give you more information about this particular theme so you can rock and roll to get started into this week. So week number 1, which is where we are right now, is healing your inner critic. How many of us have beat ourselves up 10 ways to Sunday, talking to ourselves in a voice that is not always kind? So that's this week. So week number 2 is going to be around mirror talk, which is reflecting your beauty. Week number 3, we're going to get into reclaiming your brilliance. Week 4, we're going to talk about boundaries, not walls. Week 5, softness is strength. And that is all about how we begin to rest and be still. And then week number 6 might be one of my favorite weeks because this is all about dating me first. Now, I realize that some women who are checking in with to this conversation, you may be single like I am. And so dating me first is going to be quite fun. And I'm hoping that you will join me for all the excitement around that. But you may also be the woman who is either in relationship, perhaps you're married. And this week will also be for you. So I'll get into the details around that. But just to kind of give you an idea around what these themes are so that you can begin to think about how we're going to usher into the next few weeks. Now, as I said a few moments ago, that everything that I do in terms of the services that I offer are centered around well-being, making sure that self-care is not just about physical exercise or going to the spa or getting your nails done. This conversation and while those things are very important, those are things that I enjoy, and I do encourage that as part of self-care. However, this next few weeks is going to be that and then some, because sometimes we have to move beyond some of those things that stand in our way so that we can begin to uncover and unpack some of the myths that keep us from loving on ourselves so that we can then move forward to embrace that love intentionally. So the 6 weeks and the themes around those 6 weeks are centered around that focus just as much as it will be around other areas of self-care. So I wanted to be very clear about that. So those are the themes. So now you might be saying, all right, I see that, every week there's going to be something different. So how do I actually utilize or take part in these particular things? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because here's how the Loving You First campaign will work. So on Mondays of each week over the next 6 weeks, you're going to get a new theme. So that theme will be posted on my social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Okay. And so that's how you'll get to see what's the theme for this week. So then that's on Mondays. So on Tuesdays, you get to decide how you want to apply that particular theme. So Tuesday is sort of like that moment of reflection, right? So Monday, you see the theme and you're like, okay, here's what the theme is telling me to do. So Tuesday, you get to kind of think about it. You get to look at your space, what's happening in your life right now, to see how you want to apply that. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays is when you take action, right? You get the theme Monday, you think about it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're like, okay, now it's time for me to take action on this theme. And that is when you will post your response to the specific theme's direction, if you will, and begin to engage. Now, here's the thing that I recognize is that I am encouraging you to post your action on the theme. The reason I say that is because when we post, we don't know how what we say, what we experience, what we share is not only liberating for us, but how it can help someone else. Okay. And you and I know that there's so much negative energy out there on a day-to-day basis that we can get consumed with that exasperates the stress, the overwhelm, the anxiety. And so when you decide to post your action to the specific theme, then what we're doing is we're putting out some different energy into the atmosphere so that we can be intentional individually about how we're showing up to love ourselves first. And we are also encouraging other people. Number one, if they're part of this journey with us, then they become inspired to continue on. And if they're not, it sparks a curiosity about how they can then begin to engage on their own personal level to love themselves first. Now, I do realize that there are some people who don't feel comfortable posting, especially, if it's a theme where you kind of want to share, but you don't want it out there, you want to be private. So I'm encouraging you that if that is you, then you do have the option to DM me your results of your action. And this is totally optional. I'm not requiring that this is what you do. I'm just suggesting because it's a way for us to engage together. So Wednesday, Thursday is when you can post or DM about the action behind the theme. Then on Friday, and actually this might be Friday or Saturday, depending on what's happening. I'll tell you, my son is in his senior year of high school. It's Friday Night Lights. So every Friday there's going to be football from September into November. So I will do a live recap and reflection on Fridays or Saturdays, really to just kind of recap the week. For those who decide to post a response to the theme, I will acknowledge, I'll share some of the feedback. And if there's anyone who has DM'd me responses to the theme, I will keep any sharing anonymous. Like, maybe I'll mention something just briefly. I won't say your name. Or if you say, you know what, I'm sharing this with you in my DM. This is how I followed up on the theme. And I'd rather not be mentioned at all, even if it's anonymous. So there's a couple different ways to handle that to make sure that everybody feels safe and that what you are sharing is sacred and shared or not shared based on your preference. So that's sort of like the overview of how the Loving You First themes will be laid out. And if you have any questions as I'm sharing this, please feel free to drop those in the comments, and I will be happy to acknowledge and address during this conversation. So let me just go back to my notes and make sure. And let me say this. Let me go back to this really quickly. So even though this is sort of like the weekly flow, this is not something that is etched in stone. And I want to be really clear about that. So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that, okay, Monday, I see what the theme is. Oh, but I can't post or share until Wednesday or Thursday. If you see the theme on Monday and there's something that hits you and you know that it is something that causes you to jump into action immediately, then you do it and you post about it, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wait. This just kind of gives you an overall structure of how I will manage the week, but you get to share at any point during the week. Now, how can you share? Your sharing can be in just a regular post, just text post. You might choose to share a static photo. Maybe you do a video or reel. It is totally up to you as to how you want to engage with the theme. And again, engaging with the theme is twofold. It is about you being intentional of loving on yourself first and really making a concerted effort to take action on each of the themes. And it is also to potentially encourage other people by what you share. So that's a twofold way of looking at the reason for one, posting how you engage with the theme and how you participate over the course of the weeks. So let's see, any questions? Okay, I'm gonna keep going if I don't see any questions. All right, so we're coming down the home stretch. All right, so I've told you, what it is, why it's important, what I hope that you will get out of this. I have shared with you the weekly themes and the things that we'll be talking about over the course of the 6 weeks. I've told you how the flow of the week will go and then how you can engage. So because today is Monday, August the 18th, and we're kicking off this week, then of course, you need the first theme for the first part of the journey, right? So the theme for this week is healing your inner critic. I'm not sure what I was getting ready to say there. So here's my question to you. What is it that you're saying to yourself? Like when you think about the conversation, and I'm not talking about conversations that you're having with your friends, with your coworkers, with your spouse, with your neighbors. I'm talking about the questions, the things that you are saying to yourself. And see, what I know to be true is that your voice can become your closest friend. The question is whether or not that friend and the voice that's speaking through that friend self is one that is soothing or one that sabotages. So when you think about healing your inner critic and really asking yourself, well, what is it that I'm saying to myself? How am I talking to myself? It might sound something like this. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. Or there's no way that I'll ever be able to do that, right? You already know what it is that you're saying to yourself about yourself. Nobody else has to hear the conversation, but you know. So the question is that the message that you're sending to yourself on a regular basis? And if so, then this week's theme is perfect. Now, let's not get it twisted. We all, I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how empowered you feel. I don't care how much confidence you and I have. There are moments that crosses every single one of our minds that causes us to doubt, that forces us to say things that may not necessarily be true. And so there are times when we get wrapped up into this thing called limiting beliefs because our mind is telling us something and we begin to believe it. And it is a very narrow view of what is possible or of who we are. That is a limiting belief. So let me give you an example. So limiting beliefs come from either our history, our culture, what we've been taught, our upbringing, our own experiences. So we start to learn and embody what we have experienced or what we've been taught. And sometimes that limiting belief or those are limiting beliefs, and that can cause us to have a very narrow view of what is possible. So let me give you an example. So you see, let me do it this way. So here is my fist balled up, right? And let's just say this little area here is limiting belief, right? It's very tight, it's very small, you can't see through it. A limiting belief in this space might be something like, I was taught to go to school, graduate, get a good job, and stay on that job for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Okay. And that's all there is. That's all I should be focused on. That's inside of this little narrow view. But when you begin to expand, when I open up my fist, guess what? This limiting belief then becomes something that is more open, right? That can pass through, or there can be new things that pass through it. So you might say, hey, I was taught to go to school, get the good job, stay on that job, and be the best worker that I could possibly be. There's no reason for me to think anything outside of that limiting belief, because that's what I was taught. And for me to think that I can do something different, or I can create my own, or I can be creative, or I don't have to, go work on a job for 20, 30, 40 years, I can do something different. That is something that helps to expand your belief. Okay. When we operate inside of a limiting belief, what we're doing is we are in a space of someone else's tradition, of someone else's view. And we begin to love on that more than we love on the opportunity that we have, or the desire that we have to do something different. Okay. So limiting beliefs can hinder us from loving on ourselves first, because we may be stifling the very thing that we desire to do because we're holding on to something limiting belief. I'm trying to figure out which angle is going to give you the demonstration, right, that we've been taught. So the theme for this week is to begin to unpack that. So here is how the theme will look. Okay. So this is week 1, and we're going to talk about healing the inner critic. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. And this is how every single Monday, this is how you will get the theme for the week. Now, it might not always be in a live like this. You may see it posted, and then you get to, think about it, and then you get to post about it, as it relates to you. So this is a clear example of how you will get the information, right? So week 1 tonight, healing your inner critic. So here is the task at hand, that if you say, yes, I'm going to participate, I'm going to move forward on this journey with you, then this is what you do. Number 1, for this week, I'm asking you to define one limiting belief. Now, if you're like me, you probably have or have had over the course of your life multiple limiting beliefs. And because I want this to be light, but I also want it to be engaging, I'm not asking you to write an entire list. But if you feel like that's what you need to do, then do that for yourself. But for the purposes of this particular part of the campaign, I'm asking you to define one limiting belief. Okay. That might be, oh my gosh, I'm too old to go back to school, or there's no way that I can write a book. I didn't go to school to study English. I'm not a great writer. Like, that might be how a limiting belief shows up. Then secondly, when you define it, I want you to write it down. You can write it in a journal. You can even write it on a sticky pad. If you write it on a sticky pad, I suggest that you maybe put it on a mirror where you can see it every time you go look in that mirror, like on a bathroom mirror. You got to use the bathroom every day. So it might be good for you to just get present to it. Like, oh, that's my limiting belief. I see it right there. Or your journal, if you write it in a journal, open up the page where you can see it so that you can get present. I'm sure you know that it exists, but when you see it written down, or when you feel yourself writing it, it has a different impact. Okay. So that's the second part. And then lastly, because we always want to end the theme on something that is going to be positive, to focus on the loving me first concept. So reverse that limiting belief into something positive that you will then begin to say to yourself. So let's say, for instance, if the limiting belief is, oh my gosh, I'm too old to go back to school. Well, the positive reversal of that is, you know what? It's never too late for me to learn, or there's always something new that I can learn. So you begin to tell yourself something different when you shift that limiting belief into a positive statement. Does that make sense? I'll take a moment to pause just so that if there are questions or there's something that is not clear or that you need me to go back to, that I can do that, because we are about to wrap up the conversation for the Loving You First launch. But I do want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions, make any comments, so that you and I are clear. Let's see, what else do we have here? All right, so here's the last thing that I'll say. And actually, so I'm going to post this again so that you see what the theme is. So I'm sharing it with you here during the launch, but I will be posting it on my pages just so that you have it. And then you can think about what your limiting belief is, the one that you're going to use as part of this particular week's engagement. And then you can decide how you want to share it. You can post about it again in just a text post. You can do a video, you can do a static picture, whatever you choose to do if you choose to share. And again, your sharing is completely voluntary. It is completely optional. However, I am strongly encouraging you to do so for the reasons that I mentioned a little bit ago. So here's how we're going to wrap up. One of the things that I will share is that on Fridays for my recap, when I recap the theme of the week, when I share some of the comments and feedback that I'm sure you all are going to share with me, I will also share with you opportunities that will be available to you if you need something additional to continue on your journey, right? So when the 6 weeks is over, well, not just when the 6 weeks is over, but each week there will be an opportunity for you to take advantage of things that may be free access to you, and some things may not be free. So it just depends on where you are, what you're looking for as we go through this journey. But I do want to give you that opportunity to have something additional that may speak directly to you. So with that being said, that is how we will kick off the Loving You First campaign with this week, moving into the next 5 weeks. And here's the last thing that I will say, and then I will let you go. And that is, this is intended to be fun. It is intended to be impactful. It is intended to be engaging. And you get to mix all of that into how you decide to show up. This is not something that I am forcing anyone to do. This is not something where, I am requiring you to do a whole lot of extra things. But I am saying that you know exactly where you are right now. You know what's going on in your life. You know what's going on in your head. You know the conversations that you've been having with yourself, with other people. You know the level of shift and change that is needed in your space. And so, because you know that, this is an opportunity to say, oh, you know what? Then here's a way for me to make the shift. Here's a way for me to do something necessary for me so that I can focus on what is purposeful, what is meaningful to me. So, with that being said, it is my hope that you decide to say yes to join me on this challenge, on this journey. It does require you, yes, to be intentional about, let me see what the theme is for this week. And let me think about, well, how does this apply to me? And how am I going to release some of the other stuff that I may be focusing on and allow myself to focus on this for me? So I am hoping that you say yes for all of those reasons. And if you have questions, even after this conversation is over, you can feel free to DM me. I'll be happy to address any thing that you did not hear in this conversation that you need to hear in order for you to say yes to you. So with that being said, one other round of any questions or comments that I can check out before we end for the evening. If I do not see any comments, then I am going to say thank you for joining me live. Thank you for coming in to see the replay if that's you. I look forward to seeing you again real soon. I look forward to joining you you joining me on this journey of loving you first, so that we can inspire each other, and that we can make loving you first a practice and a normal part of our every single day. All right, so take care. Look forward to seeing you soon. Until I do, take care of yourselves and be well.